Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you'll never miss a new episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the I Love Dentistry office hours featuring Gary Takis. We have been doing this for now 2 years, so this is one of our tradition. And Gary, it's so nice to meet you in the new year and do this session.
Yeah, and Aaron, Happy New Year to you and Happy New Year to all of our I Love Dentistry community members. This is our first office hours session in 2022. And we picked a topic that I think all of our community members will be interested in. And if I'm not mistaken, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that we have crossed the 12,000 member threshold in I Love Dentistry. Is that accurate?
That is correct. Yes, that's a huge milestone. I mean, literally less than a year ago, we had 6,000 members, and now we are at 12,000. So we have like doubled in less than a year.
Yeah. So, hey, let's take a minute and thank all of our community members for being part of this amazing community. It's you guys that make this so special. So thank you. And please feel welcome to share I Love Dentistry with your friends and colleagues. And it's all about helping us create a very positive footprint in our profession. And if you know of someone that would be great for this group or could benefit from this group, please let them know about it.
Absolutely. Let's jump into today's topic. The topic today is PPO plans are now lowering your contracted fees. And it's happening as we speak. So Gary, the topic PPO plans are now lowering your contracted fees, I think is timely.
Yeah, it's important to be recognizing this because, here we are in a time period where we're experiencing considerable inflation. You'd have to be living in a cave to not realize that just about everything is more expensive these days, whether it be necessities or fundamentals that we need for our business. Everything is more expensive. Hopefully that will change, Naren. But right now, inflation is a very real part of life in early 2022. Would you agree?
I agree, and I don't think prices are going to go down. You know what I mean? Whatever they are, it might stabilize and may not go up as much in the future, but definitely in the last year or two, many things are 10, 20% more expensive than they ever were. So
yeah. And yet in spite of that, where all of our, let's bring this down to dentistry at the practice level, everything is more expensive at the practice level. Our supplies, our equipment, our necessities that we need to run our practice are all more expensive. And considerably more expensive. And yet, in the face of that, the dental insurance PPO plans are cutting your fees, not raising your fees, but they're cutting your fees. I'll give you a good example that you may not have experienced yet, but it's coming. Late in December, Cigna PPO plan announced that they are cutting their fees 15% across the board. So already low PPO fees are being cut an additional 15%. So what was already very, very low fees is now being cut 15% more, despite the fact that your cost of delivering services for PPO patients are going the other way. They're going up. So really, it's the dental office that's getting squeezed in that for sure. So, and they aren't isolated in that. It wasn't just Cigna. Many PPO plans have announced that they're cutting their fees. And one of the reasons why that's the case is more and more companies, the companies that buy dental insurance, are coming to their dental insurance plans and saying, hey, we'd like to continue to offer dental insurance benefits to our employees, but we need lower premiums. We've got to recover some of the money we lost during COVID, and we need lower premiums. And the insurance companies are very happy to oblige, and they'll say, sure, we can do that for you. And the way they provide lower premiums to the employers is they slash your fees. They aren't cutting their fees. They aren't cutting the executive compensation levels or their board of directors, or they're not cutting their compensation at all. They're cutting. In fact, let's come back to Cigna. Naren, the CEO of Cigna in 2019 had an annual salary of $19.7 million. $19.7 million. Now you can't really live on that, tongue firmly planted in cheek, but that'll give you a decent start, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
How do you think Cigna did in 2020 or any dental insurance PPO plan? How did they do in the year 2020?
They did well because a lot of dental practices were shut down for 7 to 12 weeks.
7 to 12 weeks were shut down with virtually no claims being submitted, or a trickle of the percentage of claims that would have normally been submitted over that period of time, from 7 to 12 weeks. They did really good. So the board of directors of Cigna rewarded their CEO by increasing his salary. Remember, it was only 19.7, and I'm saying only as sarcastically as I can. They raised it to 67 million. 67 million.
Now in 2021, they didn't shut anything down. So I guess they had to cut the fees to make up that extra 50 million they need to pay the boss man.
Well, they had to make it up somewhere, so they're going to cut it to their providers.
Yes. Did they cut fees recently, Cigna?
Well, Cigna is the one that announced 15%.
15%, right.
They're cutting it 15%.
Right. 15. So that's where the money came from. So I guess to pay the 50 million extra to the CEO.
Does anyone see my blood pressure rising? Well, it's useful for us to report what's happening, but more importantly, let's talk about what we do about it. If any of our community members have had questions about whether it makes sense to stay in PPO plans or not, I'd like to politely suggest that now might be the right time to start to make the steps to reduce your insurance dependence. Because it doesn't make sense in this environment where your costs are going up and your income that comes in from those PPO plans is going down. The average discount today, when I say the discount, I'm talking about the adjustment between your usual fee and your contracted fee, is between 45 and 50% today. In fact, we've seen higher than that on an individual basis, on a practice by practice basis. In fact, recently in a practice in the Northeast, we saw that the difference between her usual fee and her contracted fee, the contracted fees were actually 59% lower. 59, she was only getting 41% of her usual fee. 41%.
So if the fee is $1,000, she only gets $410.
$410. And I know, I've had the privilege of getting to know many of our community members. I Love Dentistry community members. And I feel like there is a really strong ethical foundation among our community members, that they genuinely want to do the right things for their patients, for their team, and for their community. And I really feel like we've got a community of people here that are very much about doing the right thing. And I think part of doing the right thing is to have one standard of care. And that's the standard that we would accept in our own mouth. Doesn't that seem like a pretty good litmus test, Naren?
Yes.
So, think about that. How can you provide the same standard of care when there's a 59% difference in the way you're being compensated for that care? It can be done, but it's done at your expense. In fact, some of you might find out, if you actually did the analytics and did the cost accounting, that it actually costs you money out of your pocket to provide care to some of your PPO patients. It actually costs you money to be in bed. Imagine a restaurant owner that it costs the restaurant owner money to provide you a meal.
So in other words, the meal is $30, but all the ingredients, all the labor is $40. That means the restaurant owner is losing $10 every time he sells that $30 meal, right? Is that what you're saying? same thing happens in dentistry.
Yeah, it's happening. And you may not realize it because it kind of happens in an insidious way. And one thing I notice is that the more the practices that are involved heavily in PPO plans, it usually isn't a small minority of their patients that have PPO plans. Over time, it becomes the vast majority. What we usually see is that PPO patients represent 75%, 80%, 85%, 90%, even 95% of the patient base. Now, why does that happen? Why does that happen, Aaron?
I think it just I love that term, institutionalized. When you are in an environment where everything around you is, going one way, you become tuned to that environment, and that attracts. For example, if every patient keeps saying, I'll only do this if the insurance pays for it, then your team members will pretty much respond to that because they almost expect it. So they start talking that language, they start catering to that, they start accepting it. They're like, well, forget about ideal treatment, we'll just do what insurance covers.
Yeah.
So it just creates that cycle. And I think and the other reason is because they're running on such thin budgets, they don't invest in making their practice the best they can be. They don't create people the reason to want to come there. They don't invest in marketing. How can you when you're only surviving on 41 cents on the dollar? So it becomes so dependent. It's almost like sometimes you see these stories where somebody's so dependent on somebody else and they cannot survive without this other person.
It
even
becomes
abusive,
dysfunctional.
abusive relationships, right? A lot of times the people in those relationships, they don't want to leave because they feel like there's no other way for them to survive.
In fact, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the relationship that PPO dentists have with the dental PPO plan is an abusive relationship. It's abusive. You're being abused by the PPO plan. That's harsh language, but it's exactly the case. Recently, Delta, in a particular state, cut their fees. And the letter that they sent out to their providers is, unfortunately, we're writing to inform you that we have to reduce your fees. Our clients are simply demanding lower premium costs. So who's their client? Who's the dental PPO plan client? It's not the dentist.
Not the patient.
Not the patient. It's the employer who buys the plan. It's the employer who buys the plan. But there's a more fundamental reason why the majority of patients become PPO patients in PPO practices is that becomes your marketing. You're paying Delta, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, Travelers. You're paying them to provide you patients. Now, you're not writing them a check, so it doesn't show up as a line item expense. But when you are adjusting your fees 45 to 50%, you're paying them that amount of money for new patients. You're paying them that amount, and that makes no sense. You could spend a fraction of that amount, a very small fraction of that amount. So I want you to think of those adjustments from this moment forward. I want you to think of those as a marketing expense. You're not writing a check to them, but you the same effect of it. You're not getting paid right off the top.
Right.
So it's even worse because it's taken before it was ever given to you. So I want you to think of that as a marketing expense because you're paying Delta to provide you patients. Does that make any sense? No, because you could pay a small fraction of that amount by developing a comprehensive digital marketing plan like we do. You could pay a small fraction of that amount. It costs, you'd save a boatload of money. And besides that, you'll be now attracting patients who choose you for reasons other than you're on their insurance plan. Now, the truth is, you can get a good patient from Delta, from Travelers, from Blue Cross Blue Shield. Name your poison. You could get a good patient from there. But they often arrive with baggage. And the baggage I'm referring to is emotional baggage, where they're very insurance dependent. They're only interested in having something done if it's covered by their insurance. Or put a little bit more cynical way, Naren, they're only interested in having something done if it's free. Now, it's not actually free. Their employer paid a premium for that. But the patient is only interested in having something done if it's free. And that creates a whole interesting dynamic of appreciation and even values among your patients. And Naren, I had a wonderful end of 2021 because I had a chance to do some debriefings with our clients, a number of our clients that had successfully dropped PPO plans in the year 2021. I did quite a few of those meetings toward the end of the year. And one of my clients, I'll leave him nameless because I didn't ask his permission to share the story, but He said, Gary, one of the things I'm most encouraged about, certainly I love the economics that's happening now that I'm not giving 45 to 50% away to the insurance company, my practice is absolutely thriving financially. And I love that, of course. I'm able to pay my team members better. I'm able to invest in technology that I've wanted. I'm able to retire my debt. And I love all that. But you know what? Maybe the most gratifying part is, he said, patients are now interested more in their health. They're asking me questions like, how can I improve my oral health? They're seeing the doctor as their partner in health, as opposed to is this covered or not by insurance? And he said, man, I can't tell you how gratifying that is to have patients genuinely interested in how I can help them. He said, one of my biggest frustration over the years is I knew I could help these patients. I had the clinical training, I had the advanced training, I had the technology, and yet they weren't interested in whether I could help them or not. They were simply interested in whether it was free. And now more patients are showing up. It's not all patients, of course, but more patients are having conversations like, hey, how can I improve this? And he said that has been an emotionally gratifying experience where I can now use my care, skill, and judgment. And it's wanted instead of being rejected by the patient, at a very blunt, in a very blunt way, when someone asks a question, I only want to have this done if it's covered by insurance. They're rejecting anything that they'd have to pay for. Mm-hmm. And isn't it cool to flush out that rejection, or to reduce that? Maybe to be more fair, to reduce that rejection in your life and attract people that are actually interested in what it is you have to offer. Food for thought.
Absolutely.
Now, some of you might be thinking, well, yeah, that sounds good for someone else, but man, I don't know if I could ever do this here. Well, have you ever heard the saying, Naren, if it's been done before, it must be possible?
Absolutely.
Well, we've been able to help in my coaching work. We've been able to help clients in every locational setting: urban practices, suburban practices, large town, medium-sized town, small town, company town, where a majority of the employers are dominate the employment landscape. Seattle is a great example of a company town. There's many employers, of course, in Seattle, thousands, but the employer landscape is dominated by 4 companies: Boeing Aircraft, Microsoft, Amazon, and Starbucks. And we've been successful with many practices in and around Seattle, helping them radically reduce their insurance dependence in an environment where it seems like it's swimming against the tide, because so many of the employers, by the way, all 4 of those employers provide PPO plans to their employees. So it seemed like, well, that might be possible, Gary, somewhere else, but it's not possible here in Seattle. Well, we've done it, and we've been successful in every locational environment. Now, can every practice do this? The honest answer is no. The honest answer is no. If your practice is not relationship driven, by that I mean where you connect and develop rapport and relationship with your patients, then you're not ready to do this. Now, it doesn't mean you could never do it, but it means we've got to build that foundation first. And that foundation means we've got to improve our success at developing rapport and relationship with our patients. Because when we have rapport and relationship with our patients, and the patient feels like I'm going to a dental office and I'm taken care of by people who I know, like, and trust. A simple litmus test is that statement true? Do your patients feel like they're going to a dental practice and they're being taken care of by people who they know, like, and trust? If your answer to that is the vast majority of our patients genuinely feel that, genuinely feel like that. If that's the case, then you have a foundation to successfully reduce insurance dependence. Hey, Naren, what we could do for our community members, we did a Thriving Dentist Show episode on the 6 steps to successfully drop PPO plans.
Yes.
Naren, could you pull up a link to that podcast? It was on Thriving Dentist Show. Could you pull up a link to that and post that in the comments? And for any of you that are interested in going down that path, I would invite you to listen to that podcast. And maybe the next step, we're giving a masterclass on this called the 6 Steps to Successfully Drop PPO Plans in 2022 and Beyond. We're giving that on January 26th. Check my date, Naren.
Yes, that is correct, Gary.
January 26th. It's a 3-hour masterclass, 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern. You'll get 3 hours of CE units. It's very inexpensive. I want to say the tuition is less than $100. Am I accurate on that, Naren?
That is correct. $91.
Yeah, $91. You get 3 hours of CE, and I will go through in detail the 6 steps to successfully drop PPO plans. So there's some resources for you if you're kind of wondering if this is possible for you. I will tell you that every single, I did a lot of those debriefing meetings at the end of the year, Aaron, and I asked a question that I chose to ask every one of these clients so I could have some base of comparison. It's kind of like when you're doing job interviews with multiple applicants, you want to ask some of the same questions so you can compare apples to apples. And the question that I asked was, having gone through this, do you have any regrets? And not knowing what I would hear, I asked that question. Every single doctor said the same thing. Gary, the only regret I have is that I didn't do this sooner. Isn't that interesting, Aaron?
Yeah, I remember that even in the RIDA summit, we got the exact same feedback, from literally hundreds of people who were there.
Yeah. So bring it back full circle. In the face of rising inflation, hopefully that'll change, but right now we're in rising inflation. We're also faced with the blunt reality of PPO plans dropping your fees. What do you do about it? Well, my suggestion would be to take the steps to successfully drop PPO plans. Be the best strategic decision you ever made. We're sitting here on January 5th, Naren, and I'm going to be bold. Any of our listeners, any of our viewers, if you're willing to do the work, you could be successfully out of PPO plans by the end of 2022. By a year from now, actually a little bit less now, by the end of 2022, you could have successfully navigated that and have a very different practice in less than a year. Hey, Naren, December 31st, 2022 is coming around anyway. Do you want it to be a repeat of 2021? I don't think anybody wants a repeat of 2021.
Yeah,
you gotta change. You gotta do some things differently.
And one of the steps is reducing insurance dependence. So if you don't want to spend 50%, which is what you give your insurance company as a marketing fee, perhaps you could, invest in marketing and at least find out where you stand. And I would love to share the marketing strategy meeting. So if anyone is interested, maybe they could book a marketing strategy meeting to see where they stand. And, don't spend 50%, spend, 1 or 2% to get
There's
the same
a much
results.
better way forward, And, we want, for our community members, for I Love Dentistry, we want each and every one of you to have a thriving practice. What does it mean to have a thriving practice? It means it's a practice that provides personal, professional, and financial satisfaction. Personal satisfaction is you're taking care of people you like, surrounded by a team you love. Professional satisfaction means you're doing the kind of dentistry you like to do. Whatever it is that you like to do, you're doing more of that because you enjoy it. And then financial satisfaction means you're being compensated fairly for your care, skill, and judgment. And I will tell you that of all the strategic things you could do to achieve that, successfully reducing your insurance dependence is perhaps the most important strategic move you could ever make. On that note, let's again thank our community. Thank you for being part of I Love Dentistry. Thanks for being supportive. Thank you for being encouraging. Thank you for being uplifting. Thank you for being a beacon of light to so many in our wonderful profession. And on behalf of Naren and myself, let me simply say thank you. We appreciate all your involvement and all your participation in I Love Dentistry.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful new year. Wishing everyone the very best in 2022.
Hey, here's to making 2022 your best year yet.